Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter. Hi there guys, it's Adam Martyn here, and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about BBC Three. Now, for anyone who isn't aware, BBC Three is a UK television channel. It was first launched in 2003 and has always sort of been aiming to cater to what's termed as the youth demographic, so anyone between the ages of 16 up until about 34, 35. It went off-air in 2016, it went to an online-only channel, but in 2022, about 1 year ago, it came back to linear television, to the surprise of many, myself included. But it's been over a year. In fact, we're coming up close to 18 months since BBC Three has come back to television, and I wanted to make this little video to sort of ask the question, you know, has it all been worth it? It's always been an interesting one regarding the return to BBC Three, and this happened even before it came back to the TV. I think it was announced around 2021, you know, the BBC were happy with the output that BBC Three was doing at the time. I mean, it had shows like Fleabag with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Normal People, that blew up, so many other different shows as well, that even during its streaming era, as people like to call it, they were churning out shows that ended up going on like BBC One, BBC Two, that were being seen all across the world. So, you know, it was a hub of really creative, inventive, like new programming that was catching not only the demographic it was aiming for, but demographics wider than that as well. So the BBC thought, hey, let's bring it back to TV. But there were some questions. I've got an article here from The Guardian. Now, this was posted on the 1st of Feb 2022, the actual day that it came back. It says, a huge and probably futile gamble, the strange TV return of BBC Three. So even then, you know, people are already saying this was a bit of a strange occurrence. It says, the chances of a long, harmonious partnership second time around have been vastly reduced by the comeback coinciding with a funding crisis even more severe than the one that axed BBC Three 6 years ago. So a bit of context to that, when BBC Three was taken off the air, the BBC was trying to make some cuts, save some money, as they are always seemingly trying to do. And in that time, cutting BBC Three made sense. It would save them tens of millions of pounds. They made the argument that, hey, the youth demographic is consuming more of their content via streaming and online anyway. They're turning less and less to linear television. So, yeah, why not? Why don't we put this back on the TV? It made sense at the time. However, when the Culture Secretary of the time, mind you, Nadine Dorries recently announced back then, that the £159 TV licence would be frozen for 2 years, fall behind inflation for 6, if only they knew what was coming then, eh? And might cease completely from 2028, that being the licence fee, BBC Director General Tim Davie warned that the necessary economies might absolutely include axing channels. As a result, Three might feel this week like an ex who arrives at the reunion restaurant to be told the other person already feels that this is a bad idea. So what it's essentially saying is, when it came back, this was a victim of timing. We already knew that the BBC was struggling under, you know, financial cuts as always, but when Nadine decided to freeze the licence fee cost, which is the primary source of the BBC's income, that was a major blow, because now you're working with the same amount of money, falling behind inflation, you know, falling behind rising everything, so cuts are going to have to be made. And of course, this couldn't have come at a worse time with BBC Three returning to linear TV, a move which, again, would have cost tens of millions of pounds. The article says there is reason to wonder if the restoration of Three ever made sense. The corporation in 2016 decided to move the channel aimed at 16 to 34-year-olds to iPlayer alone, although Three had an impressive hit record, including shows like Gavin and Stacey, Little Britain, Murdered by My Boyfriend, etc. Data showed that the target demographic was much more likely to watch by streaming or catch up than on linear TV. And I'd argue, you know, isn't that still true? 7 years on from that cancellation, aren't most audiences between 16 and 34 consuming their content via Netflix, Disney+, Amazon Prime Video, or, you know, BBC iPlayer, ITVX? Not many people, because I'm in that demographic, I'm squarely in the middle of it, and not many people my age, I know, watch linear television. They don't sit down for a specific scheduled time to watch a program, or very rarely, you know, they'll watch it on the iPlayer, they'll watch it on ITVX or one of the streamers. In 2022, these are the reasons given for the reversal. Younger viewers still watch a surprising amount of linear television, apparently, and terrestrial restoration ensures that there will be a dedicated BBC channel for them, viewing of which will complement iPlayer viewing and may even drive additional youth viewing to it. They've basically said, here's the reasons we're making it online, and now here's the reasons why we're putting it back on TV. It seemed like a direct contradiction. And I understand that method, you know, of, oh, it's going to complement iPlayer viewing, it's going to go like hand in hand alongside with what BBC Three offers on the iPlayer. But again, especially now, 7 years on in 2023, I don't know how much that argument holds weight. Especially when you consider as well the whole license fee debate anyway. Now, you know, we could all debate the license fee until the cows come home, whether it's a good idea, a bad idea, is it outdated, does it need to be touched, etc, etc. I won't get into the full semantics of it here, but, you know, that is a big debate still with the BBC and television in general. A lot of younger generations, I mean, you know, back in the day when there was only 1 or 2 or even 3 television channels, your entertainment options in that field were limited. So buying a license fee, I guess, back then must have made more sense, or at least there was less argument surrounding it. But as the decades have gone on, you know, the expansion into satellite television and then digital television, streaming and stuff like that, I would argue as the 21st century has gone on, the debate surrounding the license fee has only continued to get more and more heated. I even see in the comments section of some of my videos, you know, some of you are saying I cancelled my TV license, you know, 7 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago, more than a year ago, and you don't consume BBC content anymore. And my view on it is, you do you. You know, if you choose not to pay the license fee, then that's your prerogative to, if you don't wish to. Considering a lot of the debate comes from not just the older generations, but the younger ones as well, the return of BBC Three to terrestrial television, again, it seems increasingly more baffling. But as BBC Three has now been back for over a year, I think, you know, like any TV channel, it's the programs that are worth the salt. If a TV channel doesn't have good programs that are going to entertain or captivate people, then what are they even bothering for? BBC Three, when it comes back, I'm trying to remember from back then, obviously it had things like Drag Race, which were insanely popular with that 16 to 34 demographic, so that made sense to have that launch on there. So yeah, there's been a slew of decent stuff that's popped up here and there, but again, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Ever since it's relaunched in 2022, I have not accessed BBC Three once. And that makes me sad to say, because back in the day, I was a huge fan of BBC Three. I think my peak years with it was, say, from 2008 to 2015. And, you know, I was fully a teenager. Those were my teenage years in that time. So a lot of that content did appeal to me. They had so many great comedies, live comedy, scripted comedy. They even had some like original drama stuff as well. It was a thriving channel. I loved going to it. But I have to make the point, even back then between 2008 and 15, when we were accessing BBC Three, it wasn't via the traditional television. We were doing it online via the iPlayer. And that was for many reasons. You know, back then, reception, well, where I am, wasn't as strong for BBC Three, so accessing the channel, even on a Freeview box, was a little bit difficult. So using the internet, as slow as it could be back then, made more sense. My friends would spend hours just scrolling through the iPlayer, specifically on BBC Three content, and accessing it that way. So, yes, everyone hypes about, you know, the glory days of BBC Three. Wasn't it all good? Wasn't it all grand before streaming? But I'm not going to lie, we consumed it online. We didn't consume it via the television. And the fact that, you know, I'm still in that target demographic, I've still got a good 7 or 8 years before I fall out of it, and I haven't touched it once since the return, that's a little worrying for me. I'm not saying my view affects the whole thing. It depends on, you know, whoever's watching. It depends on anyone who decides to tune into BBC Three. But again, in an age where competition is growing ever fierce, budgets are climbing ever higher, the BBC's budget seems to be getting ever smaller or ever frozen in a slew of cuts, I do wonder how long BBC Three is going to last on television. I mean, I know I said this about the red button recently, but honestly, I'm going to put this out there now. I'm going to say that by the end of this decade, like with the red button, I don't think we're going to have BBC Three on television anymore. I'd like to think it'll still exist on the online world, you know, back on the iPlayer as it was from 2016. The way things are going, I can't see a world in which BBC Three survives. And that's sad to say. You know, the history of that channel, the legacy of that channel, that really hurts to say, but unless like they have a miracle breakthrough with some funding or stuff like that, it might face the axe. I mean, there's already channels that are being slated to move online, CBBC, BBC4 being the two prime factors. I think they're going online in 2025 or around that sort of time. And bear in mind, that announcement came months after BBC Three came back to TV. So, you know, if those other channels are going to move online, it might only be a matter of time before BBC Three does as well, and then you'll just be left with BBC 1 and 2 on traditional television. But let me know your thoughts on this. I want to know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think BBC Three should go back to being an online-only channel? Do you think it should stay on linear TV? And if so, let me know your reasons why down in the comments. But I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Just a little discussion here about BBC Three. Let me know your thoughts down below. Leave a like. on the video if you enjoyed it, as always, and if you're new, subscribe to us here. We'd love to have you aboard. In the meantime, I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Hooks Media, Ben Freeman, Ethan Carberry-Holt, Bruce Danton, Globe of Reviews, Derek Chambers, Sean Knock, Dord Khan, Traffy, Liam Domain, and Keith Myers, our AMTV staff members.